and I'll just introduce them in alphabetical order. We have John Horsch. We have Ray Reynolds. And we have David Shook. Well, there's definitely supporters in the audience for everybody. That's great. Okay, so we're going to start with the opening statement that is 3 minutes by Mr. Horsch. So timers, are you ready? Oh, yep. Sorry.
Test. Everybody hear me? Yes. Has the time started yet? You see the 3 police officers saw that Porsche 911 doing about 90 right there, so you could tell it's all in our blood still when we heard that. So, all right, let's get started here. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm John Horsch. I want to thank the Republican Women's Group for putting this forum on, and thank you for everybody being here. This is great, and everybody online if they're watching. My assumption is that if you're here, you care about public safety, and we all care about public safety up here, so thank you for being here. I want to be the next sheriff of Clark County because I grew up here and I'm sick of what's happened to our state and to the county. And I look around and it's not what it was when I started 33 years ago with the sheriff's office. And it really bothers me. Clark County is my home. I went to high school here. Eagles, any Eagles out there? Hudson's Bay, we got a few. All right, 5 or 6. I like that. Raised 4 wonderful children here. My friends and family are here. I take pride and I want to protect our community. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 33 years, and the Sheriff's Office is my family as well. I love everybody that I work with, and I want to protect our community. I had a calling about 15 years old. I became an explorer at the Clark County Sheriff's Office. Frank Kenneco was the sheriff at the time. I don't know if some of you remember him or not. And from 15 years old on, I loved police work. I became a deputy, full-time deputy at 21 years old, worked patrol, worked undercover, worked on the bomb squad for 13 years. That was very interesting. I became a sergeant, and then I took care of several patrol squads. During that time, I worked in internal affairs as a sergeant. I was a civil deputy for a little bit, and then I got promoted to commander, where I took over the old central precinct, which is closed now, which is unfortunate. We only have 1 precinct now. I was in charge of the major crimes unit, the domestic violence. Is that me, or? You got to stop the time there. Okay, sorry, I don't know if that's me or not. In charge of the domestic violence unit, the major crimes unit, several other units, the Child Justice Center, and then most recently, I took the role of Chief Criminal Deputy at the Sheriff's Office, where I'm in charge of all the enforcement branch, about 120, 130 employees. So my education is Hudson's Bay High School, we said that. I went to have a Bachelor of Science degree in Organizational Leadership. I went to the FBI Command College, and I also went to the FBI National Academy, where I graduated in Quantico, Virginia. So I've worked in a number of capacities at the Sheriff's Office, which has given me a great depth of experience in operational. Sheriff's Office has a leader that's going to speak the truth and tell people whether they don't like something they want to hear, will speak the truth. You must communicate regularly with employees in the community. That has not happened lately. That has bothered me. I'm going to do that. The office of the sheriff should not divide our citizens politically. I'm not going to do that. I'm a sheriff for all. Well, I'm sorry if that's me or not. And now I have to end. I look forward to your questions, and thank you all for being here. I don't know if that's us or... That goes fast.
That went fast. Well, good evening. My name is Dave Shook. I want to be your next Clark County Sheriff. I have 30 years of law enforcement experience. I followed the footsteps of my father, who spent his entire life in public safety. I started in the U.S. Army, where I honorably served our country. I continued into civilian law enforcement, where I began as a reserve volunteer, until I got hired as a paid deputy. I had the opportunity to rise through the ranks, experience leadership at all levels, and participate in leading, managing hundreds of employees, millions of dollars, and various programs that affected us internally and externally, both at a local and state level. I've worked in the enforcement branch. I was a corrections certified employee. I worked in the support branch where I oversaw 600 employees and their development as a deputy or other employees. I was a training coordinator, and that was important because that is a significant issue here, not just in our region, but the state of Washington. And I believe I'm the only candidate with that jail and correctional practical experience to understand the important needs and how those correctional employees need different support, because that's what's going to help us become more safe in our community. I've mentored and led. I've experienced in the hiring, in the training, and sometimes the firing process of employees that don't fit into the mold of a professional law enforcement officer. I initially retired from law enforcement in 2018. I worked for a body-worn camera company, and I traveled this country 200,000 miles in that first several months. I talked to hundreds of police agencies, and I knew I was not done serving my community. For the past 2 years, I've worked for the Clark County Sheriff's Office as a deputy. I went from an administrator to a deputy, and I just listened. I listened to all the employees as they complained about the existing sheriff's office, the issues with training, staffing, leadership. And when I talked to them about other ways to do it, others had asked me, well, why don't you do something about it? It didn't take long to recognize that this organization used old, antiquated ways of doing policing from the 90s, 30 years old. This is how we've always done it. It's time for this community to have a modern and effective law and justice system. I have the experience, the energy, and the vision to lead us into the future of providing exceptional public safety service for our community. So thank you very much. I'm Dave Schuck.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. My name is Reynolds. I know a lot of you here, and I am running for your Clark County Sheriff. Thank you. It's time for us to begin to actually do what we say we wanted to do. That is with the police and with the sheriff's office. And that is to make your lives safe. Do you feel safe anymore? Because right now we're looking at where our safety has been compromised. I wanted to tell you, but I'm going to get back to it, but your safety has been compromised. I've been out there working every day. I work as an officer. I'm a corporal with the Vancouver Police. But I've been doing this for about 37 years. I was a game warden out of Washougal. Any hunters out there? Oh, good. Safe. I was a game warden out of Washougal, and for 13 years, and now I've been with the Vancouver Police Department now going on 25 years. And in that time that I have been with this department, I have seen a radical change and a shift towards lawlessness within our county. This is our county, and we must not allow it to happen anymore. This is where we live. This is where we raise our families. And that is where we are going to stay. We're not leaving. Your safety is paramount to me, and I can't sit back and wait any longer. Very quickly, why I'm going to run? Because I want to keep you safe. But I want also you to join me in keeping you safe. We can't do this alone. The sheriff's office is not capable of doing it alone. And with the way it has been managed at this time, we need to have a new manager, and not just manager, because there's something of a difference between management and leadership. Management executes the strategy of a leader. The leader sets the strategy, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. Our strategy is going to be to strengthen the bonds between the community and the police and the sheriff's office. We're going to develop public-private partnerships. These are the things that are getting us to work together with each other. Sorry about that. to work together with each other. I cannot, as your sheriff, do this alone. I'm going to need you to come and help me. I'm going to need you to work by my side. I'm going to need you to come and actually ride with me at times. There are times when I'm going to ask of you things that you have not been asked of before. And lastly, I want to just say thank you. I got 30 seconds. Thank you so much for coming here and caring about your sheriff's office. And I just want to thank you again for allowing me the privilege of speaking to you tonight. And I look forward to telling you a lot more about where I want to go with this department.
Okay, our first question, gentlemen, is as sheriff, and this may be a little bit redundant from your opening statements, but as sheriff, we'd like to know what your top 3 priorities are going to be in the sheriff's office. And we're going to answer in order of Mr. Horsch, Mr. Reynolds, and Mr. Shook, and you have 2 minutes to answer. So Mr. Horsch,
All right, thank you.
top 3.
Top 3, I had 8 listed here, but I'm going to do the top 3, okay? Like realtors say, location, location, location. It's called staffing, staffing, staffing. We are so low on staffing right now for a variety of reasons, and it's been going this way for a while. We're 71 positions down now at the sheriff's office. It's incredible. It's been terrible. It's taking a toll. David can attest to it. He works on the road right now. People are getting mandatoried in, working 16-hour shifts, going home. They can't keep up, have a family life, come back to work, and work effectively and protect our community. We have to fix staffing. There's several ways. I've already been working on that, revamping our hiring system. But the main issue right now we're dealing with, I'm going to pick on Ray Reynolds here, is we're losing people in the city of Vancouver because they pay more and their compensation package is a lot better. And also the state, Washington, the laws last year did a number on a lot of police officers, and I've been working on that as well with our legislators and reversing those. Number 2 is the jail. You can build a huge jail, which is good. We need a bigger jail, but you got to build the right kind of jail, or if you're going to revamp it, you have to have the right services in there for people. We don't want people to come back. Recidivism rate is too high. That's number 2 priority, is getting space at the jail and the right kind. Number 3 is communication. The sheriff has to communicate constantly with the public and involve the public with the sheriff's office making these decisions. That has not happened. I have not been the captain of the ship. I have not been allowed to do that, and it's made me sick to my stomach. We should have been talking about these issues years ago and not hearing about them recently. So that is my number 1, 3, is communicating and working with the public. I didn't know if you put the sign up or not. I'm good. Okay, I can keep going. And one of the things with that is hiring actual people that can help professionals with that communication. Cops like to go do their job, but we need professionals to come in to help us communicate that with the public. And now I got the end now. So those are my top 3 priorities. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds, your top 3 priorities as Clark County Sheriff.
Top 3, number 1, retention, retention, retention. Right now, we're looking at our department, the sheriff's office. That department right now, we're losing guys left and right. Guys and gals, we're losing incredible numbers of people. And why is that? It's because they're not being paid the amount that, like he said, that the Vancouver Police can pay them. $25,000 for an officer to come over, $10,000 for a newbie. That is great for Vancouver Police, but it is awful for us, for the sheriff's office. We need to immediately go right away and make a supplemental budget to our council, asking for them to fund at least our officers up to the level that the Vancouver Police is getting, 26%. Fund them right to that location, and that will cost, yes, about $4 million. And it's worth it. It's worth the investment, absolutely, and we're going to be able to pay for it because there is funds available, and we can talk about what those funds are later. Number 2, there's car theft. How many of you guys own a pickup truck, a F-150 or 250? Right, exactly. I'm hoping that no one steals it before the night is out. We need to make sure that we have a force that is going to stop this right away. I'm going to be talking about a program where I'm calling targeted enforcement. Targeted enforcement. That is where we're going to be looking at specifically times to go after these bad guys. And lastly, Again, I agree with my partner, communication, communication, communication. We have not communicated what we need in the sheriff's office. We have not communicated with the council what we need from them. We need to get very direct with them, tell them what we need, tell them what our budgets are going to be, and then be very forceful about it, because that is your protection. That is for you. And that's why I'm going to need you to partner with me to help solve these important issues. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Shook.
Well, thank you.
Top 3 priorities.
I'm going to go a little bit different direction here. Staffing, of course, is a priority, right? I made 6 figures the last year. I've been here 2 years. That's a living wage. Yes, we are not paid the same as the city of Vancouver. It's not about just money. It is making it a quality agency. The employees want to have development and opportunities. They want to just not drive a police car for 20 years. They want to do more than that. So giving them opportunities to grow into either leadership or investigative skills, right? That's what we all want to do. We just don't want to get into a dead-end job. The jail employees are working 16 hours a day. Last fall, their guns were taken away. They're treated like second-class employees. It's time to change the quality of management and leadership in that organization. That's number 1. My second one is relationships. Every time I turn around, we are cutting relationships off with volunteers, community groups. We need to be out in the community, having a team, being that team with you, because we can't do it ourselves. Your eyes, our eyes, we're enforcing the law, and we're finding those criminals that are victimizing us the most. The third priority for me is fiscal responsibility. This organization uses overtime like it's going out of style, right? They're planning on $3.8 million in overtime expenditures this year, in training, and all those things that they should be doing. Nobody is looking at the schedule. Nobody is changing how we are operating there. They've had this 12-hour, 4-on, 4-off schedule, and it's a 1972 study from Kansas City. It doesn't work anymore. It's a math problem to make sure you have enough employees working the road so that we can protect you and respond to those calls that are happening now. That fiscal responsibility and your taxpayer dollars are super important. And I want to dig in, I want to spot some light on this, and talk about how we're spending your taxpayer dollars. Thank you very much.
Do any of you gentlemen feel the need to rebut for a minute?
I do.
Okay.
Mr. Reynolds talked about asking the council, communicating with the council. On March 2nd, I did that. I told them what we needed to retain people. We talked about retention, which is correct about staffing. We need to retain people desperately. To hire police officers and train them, by the time they come back to the academy, it's 18 months and $40,000, $50,000. We get them back, and if we lose them to another agency because we don't have retention, March 2nd, the council was given 4 proposals of how to keep them and how to make the compensation package happen. It has not happened yet. So there's communication daily with that, with the council. So that's another issue we're going to talk about later is our county council. I know there's some people running in here, so I hope they're listening to that as well. I disagree with Mr. Shook a little bit. There are plenty of opportunities, but it all goes back to staffing. The schedule, the opportunities, if you don't have the staff to do these things, you can't do them. And we've been creeping that way over and over and has not been addressed. So staffing is the number 1 issue. I just respectfully disagree with his analysis. Thank you.
Any other rebuttals, gentlemen? Okay. We are going to go to question number 2. And Mr. Reynolds, you will answer this one first. Clark County has seen a sharp increase in illegal homeless encampments, which has resulted in a spike in property crimes along with degrading quality of life for area residents. What actions will you take as sheriff to solve this growing homeless problem? Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you. This is probably one of the most important questions that we can have for our area. Lately, we've been experiencing this homeless issue. Why is that? It's because we're going with the same failed policies of Seattle, the same failed policies of Portland, and the same failed policies of California that brings this kind of attitude here. So now we're allowing people to live on the streets and saying that that's all right. Well, it's not all right. It is not compassionate. We need to stand for what we know is right. Allowing these people to live in these, what I'm going to call crime camps, is unacceptable. How in the world is that compassionate? How is that a world holding them accountable? We are not. We are allowing this to happen, and you're seeing it real time happening in your neighborhoods. What are we going to do about it? This is what we're going to do. Number one, we have to look at, we don't look at homelessness just as one entity. There's three types of homeless. We're looking at, number one, we're looking at the chronic homeless. We're looking at the acutely homeless, and then the criminal homeless. We need to treat them all different how we respond to them. Now when we go out there and we see somebody that's acutely homeless, that means that person has been out there and doesn't want to be. We have the services we can do. We're going to develop a program called the NET. And number two, the criminal homeless, there's only one good answer for the criminal homeless. We arrest them and we take them to jail. Now again, all of that is going to be dependent on how we help with our jail and how we have other resources that are available. But the primary thing now is have accountability, but also compassion. And that's what I'm going to do when I start.
Mr. Shook is going to answer that second.
Hi, thank you. Well, there was a case law in the city of Boise versus Martin who says that we can't just kick people off the public roadways if we don't have the resources for them to be, right? So we don't have enough homeless resources here, so we as the police can't go kick them off of the public right-of-ways. That's why you see them in the roadways and the underpasses and all those kinds of things. It's important to follow the law because then you get sued by the ACLU and other groups, right? And so we have to do a better job of coming together as a community. Not just the police, because first of all, our jail is full of rapers, robbers, and murderers, and those people that are hurting us the most. So what part of the 800 people are we going to jam into this jail, right? Are there alternatives? Absolutely. And that's what we've got to come up with. I absolutely believe that there are homeless out there that are committing crimes. You bet. If I had to live in a tent, try to find food, try to find shelter, guess what? There's problems with that. So again, just to arrest them is not going to solve the problem because they have a lot of other issues. Not every homeless is a drug-addicted person. Not every homeless is mentally ill, but sometimes they're all of them. And that's all we do all day long. I go to 5 or 6 calls with the same homeless person who's in one store causing an issue, and the next door, we have no place to put them here in Clark County. The hospitals are overwhelmed. So we've got to come up with a better solution. And as sheriff, that is not ours to solve. It is a community issue. And as sheriff, we need to be involved because we shouldn't have others coming up with solutions and then saying, how is that going to work? So again, criminals that are hurting each other and committing crimes that deserve to go to jail, absolutely, that's where they should be. But the others, we've got to find alternatives and get them to services out. The portals to get into the resources here are small. The number of homeless is large. That's what we hear every day. And that's what we need to solve. So thank you very much.
Mr. Horsch?
I don't think we're going to disagree too much on this one, coming from law enforcement. Yes, there are, when people say homeless, it's one of the number one questions I get asked. And people have different definitions of what homeless. A business owner talks about a homeless issue, it's usually about trespassing on their property and inhibiting the business. And other people have compassion, say, what are you doing about the homeless who are drug addicted? So there's a wide variety when we say the word homeless, and I think we've talked about it a little bit right now. We can't keep putting Band-Aids on it, communities can't keep putting Band-Aids on it and providing somebody with some food right there or something like that. The mental health issue in Clark County is going through the roof, along with the drug and alcohol addiction. I work with people weekly who are addicted to drugs and alcohol, and I see what happens to them. I personally work with them. I'm on the board of Lifeline Sobering Unit in Clark County, which is a great thing. Partnering with these agencies, open house ministries, there's several of them in Clark County are very important that law enforcement partners with and works with. We are the front line. We get called there a lot first, right? That's what happens. You just talked about going to the same person for four times. We can't have that. We need to be going to the bigger calls. But those people also need help. I'm currently working on a co-responder program that the City of Vancouver just started on a pilot program through the Columbia Bureau of Mental Health and other agencies, that we can get co-responders that go out with us in mental health crisis and help these people and get them the resources. This, unfortunately, is not a law enforcement issue as much as people want to put it on law enforcement, but we are part of this wheel that we work, and when we work with these other groups. I have been doing that. I've been building these relationships. They need staffing as well. That's the number one thing they tell me. We want mental health workers to come out there and help you. Their staffing is pathetic. They don't have it either. So then we have this problem grow. When there is a crime, yes, people need to be arrested. There's absolutely. But we cannot arrest our way out of this problem. Thank you.
A 1-minute rebuttal by Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah, that is a statement that we can't arrest our way out of the problem. That's been used a lot by a lot of our different agencies. Down in California said the same thing, Portland said the same thing, and Seattle said we can't arrest our way out of it. And I agree. We have to come up with different programs. And one of the programs that I've designed is called the NET. I call it my Neighborhood Excellence Team. What we do is we get a number of people. We get people who are part of businesses. We're talking people that are part of our mental health. And one of them right now, like Clean Streets, those folks are so helpful. We then surround the person with all of these helps. And that is what takes them off the street. We have been successful in getting many, many people off the street. Not talking about it, not saying we're having programs, actually doing it. And that's where it counts. The net, that we can look at the program that I've designed, and we're going to do even more. So yes, we can work our way out of this problem.
Question number 3. Recently, Sheriff Atkins has laid blame on the Clark County Council for budgeting, staffing, and response time challenges in the Sheriff's Office. Is this a budget problem due to lack of funding, or have key staff positions gone unfilled? Or is this due to other factors? If so, please provide details on what you would do to improve public safety for residents in Clark County. And Mr. Shook is going to answer this question first.
Well, thank you. As our generations change and our law enforcement changes, so should we. Again, we've been using the same processes and employment plans for 30 years. It's time to start using technology and other things to make sure that those appropriate calls do go to online. There's a lot of folks that don't want to talk to the cops. They just needed a case number for an insurance claim or something else. But a lot of those calls go unanswered, and there's nobody looking at the other end of that. So this argument back and forth about, well, you're fully funded and you have enough staffing and you can't keep them, that is partially accurate. But every time we or the employees take a step in improving their wages, county managers take that away. And they're saying, hey, guess what? You've got to choose one or the other. For example, hey, a 4-year degree, guess what? We're going to give you an extra percentage. Next year, hey, by the way, if you want that, you're going to have to give something else up. These wage packages are national kinds of trends. Again, I'm not talking about the 10,000 and the 25,000, but the longer you're in there, 20 years, you stop getting incentives for being there. So for an employee that's been there 40 years, guess what? You stop getting those wages. It's time to look at the entire package, pay these employees what they're worth. I can go to Taco Bell and make $21 an hour, which is much more than some of our administrative staff. So again, while it's an accurate statement, it's not fully accurate. And so we need to dig a little deeper. Again, as we compare and we're the lowest paid and the lowest staffed in the state, absolutely true. There are ways around that, ways to add in things. We can look at the budget. We can practice and look back at our overtime. How many times do you look at how much extra money? At the end of the budget year, right, you and your homes, if I know I only have X amount of money, then I need to budget better through the year. That's called managing your home budget. Same thing happens in any organization, and we need to do that here as well, better.
Mr. Horsch? Do you need me to repeat the question?
It was long, but I think I got it. Go ahead, just for the heck of it.
Well, I'll just paraphrase.
Okay.
Sheriff Atkins is blaming the Clark County Council for some of the budget, staffing, and other responsive time challenges in the sheriff's office. So what will you do as sheriff to address those?
All right, here we go. So a little precarious position because Sheriff Atkins is my boss, right? Everybody knows that. And I'm his boss too, so that's the way it is. But I'm running a political campaign and I want to be sheriff. It is accurate to some degree, but here's what happened. We've remained silent. I have a different leadership style than my boss, and I've sat down and talked to him about this. I never would have let this go this far. The public should have known about the issues. If 5 years ago we couldn't get X, Y, and Z, and the county council and the sheriff could not agree, the public should have been made aware and said, I need your help. I will do that. I do not know why that was not done, but I don't get to call those shots. I don't set the policy. I'm not the head of the sheriff's office, but it's made me sick that we haven't. People are upset about a lot of things. It should not have been news to you. The staffing issue has been going, it's been a 20-year problem, about, if you want to call it % a year, and it's been going and going, and we did not involve the public, and we should have. And I'm going to do that from day one. I'll start on November 9th. The election's November 8th. I'm not being trying to say anything, but November 9th, I'm going to start that communication because we can't wait any longer to get these people. I will comment that you did comment that wages wasn't everything, and the last time you did say we needed better packages, so I'll call you out on that one, David. So anyways, but it's true. The communication, that was one of my top priorities with the public, involving the public. We used to have citizen advisory boards under Gary Lucas a long time ago, where you take members of the community and employees and you get them all in a room, all the stakeholders, and you talk about it, and with the county council. I don't want to just say it's all the county council's fault. There is some issues there. There's no doubt about that. There's been some lack of leadership on the county council's part. It's made me sick there too. But blaming people and not looking at yourself, because you have to look at yourself. Leaders have to look at themselves. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And I will tell people where we stand with staffing and those issues. Thank you.
Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you. We can't keep blaming everybody for what happened. We can't blame the council wants to blame the sheriff's office wants to blame the council. Enough. Here's what we're going to do. Number one, we're going to do a better job at communicating because we have not communicated. The council says that the sheriff's office has not communicated to them what their needs were until only recently. Has that happened? I have no reason to doubt it. But then the sheriff's office says, hey, the council has not decided to pay our people. Because of the way this whole thing is set up in the charter, the sheriff doesn't even have a say. It is a complete bargaining set between the county managers and the different guilds within the sheriff's office. Important thing we have to have resourcefulness. I propose that we have developed what's called a county board, a county advisory board. I'm going to have those, including you, stakeholders, community members, even community activists, to come here and actually help the sheriff's office come to an idea of what we need. Also, the sheriff, I want him to be involved in the guild negotiations. Now, how is that going to happen with this charter? Well, the way it's going to happen is I'm going to ask the guild and have what I'm calling a guild roundtable, where we can talk about what they need, what the support needs, what enforcement needs, what the corrections need, and even what some of the managers need. But the important thing is that we develop this communication line that hasn't happened. And where those intersect, that's what we're going to go for. Now, one of the things I wanted also to talk about is when we get to those places where we know we have to have money, 30 seconds, thank you, where we know that they should be paid more. Again, how in the world did we allow our sheriffs to be paid 26% less than all the others? I don't know how we did that, but we did it. But now we need to have ourselves a different type of leadership. Our retention of our personnel is absolutely important. And we have to have comparable pay. We have to have integrated community involvement. That means you. And we also have an active involvement of our city council. I'm not going to go there and constantly say, it's your fault that this happened, or it's your fault.
Okay, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you.
Is there anybody that wants to rebut for a minute?
Do you want to go first or you want me to?
Mr. Horsch, 1 minute.
Okay. The sheriff, it's true that the sheriff does not set the budget, but the sheriff should be using his influence with the county council and going over there and fighting for their employees. I'm a fighter. That was not done. So that is true that the sheriff doesn't set those, he sets operational things, but packages, compensation packages, the sheriff himself does not have that authority. But meeting with the county council, elected officials need to work together in the same room and see forecasting. This should have been forecasted years ago what was happening. It's unfortunate that there are guild contracts, they're binding arbitration, so they do have a fair process to go through, but this was not looked at and seen on the horizon, and the sheriff's office needs to do that, and I will do that as sheriff. I've seen these things coming, but again, I haven't been able to, in that seat, to make that influence with the county council. So, my 1 minute's up, it looks like. Go ahead, dude.
7 seconds.
Mr. Shook, 1 minute.
I'll give it to you.
Oh, thank you. Actually, as sheriff, I think that you should be leading that discussion, and I understand the charter says that it's only the county manager that does that. But the sheriff should be having that influence opportunities. The other part is the sheriff is the CEO of this organization. That means he's overall responsible for that $68 million budget or whatever it grows into. Again, we can alter how we use our operational skills and using that overtime, right? Currently, right now, they're spending 2.25 times an hour, right? So anytime somebody comes out to work, they're getting a lot of money, about $100 an hour. So again, as a sheriff, I should be involved, the executive of that organization, to both be influencing of the administration, but also understanding and sharing with the guilds, hey, listen, these are our steps. These are what we're going to move to in the future, so that it's a strategic plan in how we get to a well-paid. We're not the city of Vancouver. We're never going to have that 26%. It just doesn't work that way.
Okay, Mr. Reynolds, did you want to rebut for a minute?
Yes, it would. 1 minute. We have to, I absolutely do not agree with that assumption, what he just said about the pay for these officers. If an officer is working, we need to pay him. If an officer is working, we need to pay her. We need to pay our people. The issue of overtime is only because our staffing issue right now is absolutely abysmal. We have to understand that. So that's why we're going to go ahead and, we're not going to put any of the blame on our officers, and I'm absolutely against anything which says that we had to hurt our officers any more than they're already being hurt. Enough of that.
So let's move on to question number 4. And Mr. Horsch is going to answer this one first, followed by Mr. Reynolds, followed by Mr. Shook. As elected sheriff, how will you respond if the Washington governor signs unconstitutional gun confiscation legislation into law? Specifically, will you uphold Second Amendment rights for law-abiding citizens, and will you refuse to enforce any such law in Clark County?
I'm writing just a little bit. There's 3 parts in there.
Yes.
Do you mind going one more time, please? I want to make sure. This is an important one, so I want to get
It is very important. And this is, by the way, gentlemen, this is my favorite question of the night.
All right.
And I wrote them all. And so Governor Inslee, he signs an unconstitutional gun confiscation legislation into law. How will you respond, and will you uphold our Second Amendment rights for us law-abiding citizens, and basically will you refuse to enforce any such law in Clark County? It's all kind of rolled up into one.
I think I can get that. It's homeless
2 minutes.
and Second Amendment. Big topics this year. All right, we ready? Okay. I took an oath, just like these gentlemen, same oath, when we became police officers, to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the laws of the United States and the state of Washington, the Constitution. We took that oath, okay? But recently, in the state of Washington, there's been some controversial things that have come out that people wonder, is this constitutional or not? And what does the sheriff do? And we've heard sheriffs make statements about what they will or will not do. So as sheriff, I'm charged with upholding people's rights, right? and we have to protect people's rights, everybody's rights, all citizens. This has already come up a few years ago on 2 incidents with gun seizures that we felt. I met with the prosecuting attorneys and said, I think we have an issue with this. So there needs to be discretion and discernment what we're going to do when a gun law is passed, certain gun laws. And I met with Tony Golick's office and says, I think this one's a problem. Has not gone through the judicial process. That's the one problem that our legislators do. They can pass laws that have not gone through the judicial process, so that it puts our frontline people out there in making these decisions. That's very difficult. Met with them, and we decided not to take action, but to document and record. So we already had one. I do not believe, and I'm going to say this tonight because I think we should have all candidates up here say this. I do not believe it's my job to overstep my bounds as executive branch and say, I believe a law is unconstitutional. But I have discretion on how we will enforce or not enforce those laws. We use discretion every day, a jaywalker, a speeder, we just saw them, can give them a ticket or not give them a ticket. There's only a few laws in the state of Washington that were mandatory to make an arrest. So I will use discretion and discernment and talk about these things because it's a big issue. I'm not sure, if you go in and as a sheriff, as an executive branch is what we are, and try to be the judicial branch, there's 3 different branches of government for a purpose, and it's unfortunate that is that way. So I think we should have all the candidates explain if they can make a law unconstitutional or not.
Mr. Reynolds.
Rosa Parks got on a bus and she sat down. She sat down. In walks somebody, a white person, and says, give me your seat. She said, no, I'm not doing it. An officer walked in and arrested her. Rosa Parks got arrested for that. Her civil rights were violated because there was a law that said it was okay to arrest her. Several people in Tulsa, Oklahoma were jailed, and some 300 were killed. 6,000 were placed into detainment camps because there was a law that allowed it to happen. Because the sheriff didn't have a decision, didn't have the guts to stand up and say, this is wrong. Simply put, I will not enforce unconstitutional laws in the state. Your Second Amendment rights are absolutely critical to me. 1639 is a major violation of your civil rights. When you sign that piece of paper, if you didn't know it, you give the sheriff and and your police departments the right to search your records. That is a violation of your Fourth Amendment right. It cannot be held. And you need to understand that there comes a time where you need to say no. And this is such a time. So as your sheriff, you have my word, that will not happen.
And Mr. Shook, you will now answer that question, please.
Well, thank you. Hey, I appreciate your clapping there. Actually, there are laws passed every day that are unconstitutional. Our legislature is not checking the Constitution before they're making these laws. Being an executive in the executive branch, just like the governor, just like the city mayors and so forth and so on, we have choices. We have choices on whether or not we are going to arrest people or we're going to enforce those laws. We have the discretion, as John had said. And I agree with that assessment. If you find, I find that it's unconstitutional, we have that discretion until the law says you don't. There are some laws that the legislature is like, listen, sheriff, you're going to jail. You're the one who's ultimately responsible. Now, Ray said 1639 is unconstitutional or it's violating your rights. I've seen many folks that were experiencing mental health and other issues, criminal folks that have killed loved ones and whatnot. I don't mind that there's a background done as long as there's due process on getting your guns back and figuring it out. It's not an all or nothing. It's a temporary moment. Those homeless folks, those mentally ill folks. So unconstitutional laws should not be followed, and we have the discretion as executives and the sheriff, as the sheriff, to not follow those unconstitutional laws. So thank you.
So is there any 1 minute rebuttal, Mr. Horsch?
Yes, I already did that. I already had a few examples where we didn't follow it, and I just brought them up. So it's already come up. But what I want to know, I don't know if I can ask questions here, is do you feel as Sheriff Ray Reynolds that you can deem a law as unconstitutional, that the law is unconstitutional, not that you have discretion on how you do it, but that you have the sole authority to determine if a law is unconstitutional without it going through the judicial process?
Thank you, John. That's a good question. Here's the answer. Every day that I work, I have to make a decision on what's constitutional. The court, especially when you're looking at, say that there's a chance where the officer has to decide whether to seize a child or not because of an abusive situation. The courts have ruled that the officer is the expert on Fourth Amendment decisions. That decision came up very clearly, that the officer has to make a decision. Do I have probable cause, and do I have an exigent circumstance, and does it fit within the Constitution? Officers that decided to take a child that did not have those two qualities were deemed that they had violated the civil rights of that family. So yes, we are considered the expert on the Constitution. We are considered the experts by the courts on what the Fourth Amendment. So yes, I will make that decision.
You didn't answer the question. You didn't answer the question. I'm just curious. Are you the sole authority to determine if a law, not process, is unconstitutional? You as sheriff are the sole authority. That's the question. You said yes? Okay. All right.
Okay, we're going to move on to question 5. This is a little less interesting. Question number 5, and Mr. Reynolds, you will answer this first, followed by Mr. Shook, and finishing with Mr. Horsch. What do you believe is the best plan to either upgrade or build a new jail in Clark County? Mr. Reynolds first.
Right now, it looks like we're looking at $425 million to build a brand spanking new jail. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. What's going to happen is we need to develop partnerships. We have, right now, we have about $90 million that has been given to the county. $45 million last year, another $45 million this year. Those are called ARPA funds. Those funds were made so we can use them to mitigate the effects of the COVID. It can also be used to build. My plan is to have a modular position. That means start slow, build one portion of the jail, and then continue building other portions as we go. Utilizing those ARPA funds will be very important because we can do it. Also, one of the main things we need to do also is to engage our community. Many of our situations we're running across are mental health involved, where we have a number of different agencies like Vancouver Clinic and Kaiser. All of those people we can engage in helping us. I've spoken with a couple of them. They said we would be very interested in what we can do to partner with you to help develop a good jail and maybe even contribute financially to it. So initially we want to do a modular thing where we can build a portion of the jail right away. Also, we have some outstanding opportunity with that information that we came up with last time that was given to me, a wonderful idea that we broached back in February, and that is to utilize the jail, the JDH, which has, 80 beds, and which only has 6 kids in it right now. Also, we have the jail down there on the water, down on the river, at the bottoms down there. They have 100 beds that we can use. We can use those beds. That's 180 beds that we could use. That's outstanding. Let's use that. Let's take that stuff and use money like the ARPA fund, and if we could, even use REIT 1 funds to do that. So thank you very much.
Mr. Shook, best plan to either build a new jail or upgrade existing facilities?
Yeah, so this jail that was built in 1984 is falling down around the inmates and the employees, right? It is beyond its capacity. I understand the county manager is trying to put some millions of dollars into fixing various areas. My opinion is that we put a Band-Aid on it just so that we are not creating liability for the county. Stop what we're doing. Stop putting money in the money pit. Come up with a different plan. Now, using the juvenile detention center in the JWC building are great ideas, except we still don't have the employees to manage all of those, right? So it goes back to staffing. When we can't even staff the minimum number of employees to be safe inside of the existing facility, that's an issue. So we create, and for me, we don't have a full-time training center. The police department is having, or our West Precinct is having the fire department come back. We got kicked out of the central shops, right? You know, the roof was falling out. We need to invest in our future here and find opportunities. The county has been investing in various properties around the county, right? So we need to come up with a different funding source. A private partnership, that is great. There are grant funds and other things that we are not looking into to find the opportunity to build a main facility first that has those options for the mentally ill and those special needs folks, because that is a huge, it's about 20-25% of the population in the jail right now. So we need to have those specialized areas. But the existing facility, putting lipstick on a pig, is not the way to go about this. We need to find alternative locations and sites to build, and moving forward into the future and investing in our safety in our community. Thank you.
Mr. Horsch, best plan to either upgrade or build a new jail in Clark County?
He read my notes.
Oh, I did?
It's all right. I had lipstick on a pig. That's okay. That's a big question. So one thing I think we'll all agree upon here is none of us are experts on jail building. Okay, we all have ideas. Okay, and we know we need to do something. It is affecting crime. People are not even getting arrested on crimes because we don't have the space. And just calling a bed at JDH, I've heard all these plans. There's a lot of good idea fairies out there, but how are they practical? You can't just say we're going to put 80 beds over here. The staffing is the number one thing. You have to have the staffing person. How do you harden those things? And what are the actual costs? I think people are doing a minimum amount. The number one thing you have to do is get everybody in the room and strategically plan this out and figure out what do we want for the county. Do you want 1,000 or 1,500 beds for the county? Because you need to be looking 20, 30, 40 years down the road here, not just right now. And I will agree with David, what kind of services are we going to provide in that jail? A proper jail has enough space, but when you pull in, if you have a mental health or behavioral issue, they go into one area. Many jails are set up this way. Or a medical issue, you go over this way. We're not set up that way. Our jail is falling down. It's pathetic. I worked in there a few weeks ago with some of our people. I couldn't believe what's happening. If you guys took a tour in there, you'd be sick. It's sad. It's not good for the employees, and it's not good for the inmates. I know some people may not say we don't care about that, but no, we need to take care of people in there. We need to be humanitarian to them. It's not good. We need to do something, but there's a lot of ideas. I'm hearing the counselors talk about a lot of ideas. I hear a lot of people saying we need to do this. It has to start with strategic planning and where are we going. The studies have been done of what different options can be done. There was one study done in 2018, a large study, and then the council changes. And that's where the leadership of the council needs to go. We're going to get with the sheriff and we're going to figure out a plan and get the experts in here to figure out what do we do. There's some temporary things that we can do to make it a little bit safer, but it is putting lipstick on a pig. Dumping $50, $60 million into something is not the long term that we want to go with. I'd rather take a few more years and do it right. But we need to get in a room and talk about this together. Thank you.
Gentlemen, are there any rebuttals?
One.
Mr. Reynolds?
John's absolutely right about the issue as far as there's going to be different needs within the jail itself. No question about that. But we simply can't wait any longer. We have to have something right now to help do some work on, and that means that we need to look at utilizing these ARPA funds so that we can do the building right now. Otherwise, they will go away. We have that money right now. And the leaders, we need to take that money and utilize it. Modular right now is the way to go. We can work with our folks out in the county, and we can work with our folks with the Vancouver Clinic and other places. They will help us as far as designing this facility. They also even talked about the memorial building down on Main Street and 33rd, utilizing that facility as something that is going to be a very good idea, I think, and that was broached by one of our clinics who said that would be a great idea. So let's go ahead and we're looking at, I got to end. Oh, no.
Okay, any more rebuttals? Mr. Shook has a 1-minute rebuttal.
So, Ray, you keep talking about ARPA funds. We have no control of that. The county is in charge of that. In fact, all the first responder monies has not gone out to the first responders. Nobody in the sheriff's office has received $1 that wears a uniform, right? So to say we have $40 and $90 million and we're just going to do something with it is not really accurate because we don't control that, even as sheriff, right? That's not in our budget. We have this $68 million, we can manage that, and even only portions of that manage that. Separating and putting people all over around the downtown area only expands the need for more employees. So again, great ideas, but it just is going to take more money, more staffing, people that are appropriately trained. You just can't get a security guard to show up and secure an inmate because they're having mental health and other issues. They're going to have to go to the academy. They're going to have to be certified and trained just like everybody else that wears a uniform. So we need to have other conversations. Thank you.
1-minute rebuttal, Mr. Horsch.
You've already done your rebuttal, I think. That's all right. I just reminded you. There's not a debate on this. David Shook and I agree on this. You can't just make a bed anywhere and have it all around there. Taking care of people who are incarcerated is a big deal. It's a high liability for the county. You have to understand that. Again, none of us up here are experts on it. We have ideas and we have influence, but you've got to bring the experts in, talk about that. And the ARPA money, the county council can spend that almost any way they wanted to. I was listening to Joe Biden, don't kill me for saying that, speak about the ARPA, no, hang on, let me finish, and saying how much he gave to law enforcement, which is a correct thing. And he said they need to be spending that on law enforcement now. He said by the summer. It's only probably one of the things I agree with him on, and I'm sitting there going, yep, and that has not happened here yet. But that's where the relationship and the influence with the sheriff and the county council has to come in the communication. That has not occurred, and I will do that. Thank you.
Okay, question number 6. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Isn't this better than the League of Women Voters, you guys? Holy cow. You guys are doing a great job. Okay, question number 6. This is going to be answered by Mr. Shook first, and then Mr. Horsch, and then Mr. Reynolds. Question number 6 is, in the future, if Governor Inslee uses emergency powers to enact further lockdowns and or unconstitutional mandates on residents, how will you respond regarding enforcement? Mr. Shook.
Thank you. This is actually very simple. We don't have enough employees to take care of those that are out there hurting us, right? So I would not direct any of my employees to be involved in any sort of roundups or other illegal mandates like that. So that's very simple for me. Thank you.
I could just repeat the same thing. We've already done that. 3 years ago or 2 years ago when it came out, we put out a statement and saying we are not the masked police. It came out by Chuck Atkins. I supported that and I would continue to support that. We said we are not going to get involved in that. So it's very, very simple answer on that one. I agree.
Wow. So there's probably no rebuttals.
I'll rebut now.
Thank you, gentlemen. And now we will hear from all 3 candidates with a closing statement. And the closing statement is 3 minutes. It's a long time. And Mr. Reynolds, You will make your case first, followed by Mr. Shook, finishing with Mr. Horsch. 3 minutes.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for coming. It's been very informative for me, especially. As your sheriff, I believe that the civil rights of Clark County residents must not be compromised, and I will not. I believe that we will, any laws that are unjust, I use the definition that Martin Luther King used for an unjust law. You know, those laws that bring the dignity of the population down, they're unjust. And we must not go with those laws. I will work closely with legislators now and into the future to correct these errant laws, the ones that have been passed, I call them the dirty dozen, that have been passed that have actually shackled me as a police officer and has shackled every officer up here to be able to protect you and defend you. And it makes me sick. I will practice compassionate accountability when we're talking about serving our homeless brothers and sisters. Compassionate accountability. We will serve and we will help every single one we can. And I've told you about our NET program, how we do get housing with not in 2 days or 3 days, but within hours to get them taken care of. And this program is not an idea. It is a working prototype right now. I want you to join me. I want you to join me. Join me in doing what must be done. That is, protecting Clark County, defending your civil rights, and then making sure that you have the options and the right to tell your sheriff what you want to be done. That is what I will. As your sheriff, I do not answer to the council, I do not answer to Inslee, and I do not answer to anyone but you.
Try this one? I thought you did that on purpose, right?
I'm sorry.
All right. Last time you stood up. Oh, it's David.
You forgot? I forgot. Sorry. Anyways, this is such an amazing group. Thank you for coming out and listening to us. I think that the common theme here is that we care about you as our community. We care about your rights, and we want to help make our community safer. Protecting your rights from the Constitution on down to what we do here in this community. Each of us should feel safe in our home and in our person. And right now, I don't think that's the case. In this community of law enforcement professionals, we are siloed. In fact, the sheriff's office doesn't effectively communicate in the same branch, much less the same sheriff's office. So how do we effectively communicate with you and the public and then other police agencies? The criminals don't care which uniform shows up, right? They don't care which side of the city that they're going. And so we need to have a better team approach to attacking these criminals. And it's time for us to take these streets back. There is a group of folks up in Richfield. They have taken on a neighborhood watch where they are out all hours of the night in various communities, patrolling on their own, being the eyes so that the police can show up and help as necessary. We are not going to get out of this dilemma on our own as the government. We need help from you as our partners, from other organizations. So we need to take the laws, and we either have them or we don't, right? So the laws are on the books. They're tools for us to use to get out there and make sure that we are arresting the folks that we should. The second thing that I want to do with that is I think you all should be familiar or aware of what kind of prosecutions and what kind of cases are actually being adjudicated from the judges. The prisons and state prisons are still closed down. So even though we are arresting and processing folks through our criminal justice system, there's not a lot of different places for them to go. So we need to make sure that our partners in other criminal justice components of our state are open and working. It's time to open up this sheriff's office and become your customer service provider that you need and you deserve. As your next Clark County Sheriff, I look forward to working with you and developing more and different relationships that are currently here and making them more efficient. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.
And we'll finish with Mr. Horsch's 3-minute closing statement.
All right, thank you all. This has been good. I enjoyed it. Thanks, Liz, for contacting us. And again, everybody who's online, I don't know if how many are online, but I appreciate it. We all care. You can hear we have some passion up here. We don't like it. You guys don't like it. We've got to change it. Last year, I was on the phone day and night, text messaging and meeting with legislators on both sides of the aisle because those laws did a number to law enforcement, which did a number to our safety. And I was on the phone constantly up until the final day on March, I think 9th or 10th, when it was a short session, getting these laws changed. We got some good things happen, but not everything got changed in reverse. And it took a number, and nobody has discussed this yet, and I'm going to bring this up, about the police officer on the street. We just think they're a commodity. We hire people, but that's not true. They're a police officer on the street. I did it for many years. These are people with lives and families, and they felt the impacts of the law, thinking we want to go help people, but what are we going to do? We can't chase them anymore. We can't arrest these people. What are we doing? They're leaving the state. Actually leaving this state, leaving our agency left and right. The first thing you have to do is get those laws fixed. And I have been working on that relentlessly. And we've got some good changes. It's killing us. So I want to remember the police officer on the street, man or woman, and their families. Last week at this time, at this very hour, I was in Washington, D.C., for Police Week, where they honor fallen officers from the year before. They did 2 years' work because of COVID, and we were at the candlelight vigil at this very hour from 6 to 8, and they read over 600 names of fallen officers. And you sit there with all these people, 10, 15, 20,000 people, and the candles, and you talk about, and you see these kids there who lost their parents or somebody, an aunt and uncle. And I'd love for us to say, next year we're going to cancel the candlelight vigil because there's no names to read. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but we got to do something better than that. We have to take care of our people first. If we don't have people that want to get in law enforcement and protect us, we can't keep our community safe. It starts with people and the relationships. We can talk about strategic planning all day long, and that's good. We can talk about unconstitutional laws, and that's good. But if you don't have the people in that car going call to call to call, we don't have public safety. That's the number one priority I'm going to give you. We've got to get that corrected. So that's my promise to you. And I want you to hold me accountable to that too. As your next sheriff, whatever I say, you replay this and you'll hear it. And I'm going to tell you where we stand. So I want your support. I'm asking your support. If you have any more questions you want to ask me, you can come up to me afterwards or get on my website or call me or email me. I'd be more than happy to. But I would like your support for sheriff. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Thank you all three. You've been gentlemen, and we are so honored that you're here with us. And you're so good that we're ahead of schedule by about 15 minutes. So I'm making a command decision as president of the Republican Women. We're going to ask you a few questions from the audience. But here's the deal, okay? The audience has to be really respectful and civil, because remember, we're not Democrats, we're civil. And also, I want timers, I want you to, these need to be 30-second answers, okay? 30-second answers so we can have more questions from the audience. And I'm going to ask the first one, okay? Because a really good friend of mine who's a retired Clark County judge texted me this afternoon. And he informed me that apparently the Columbian referred to $65,000 worth of broken windows at the Clark County Sheriff's Office as minor damage. The only reason the Clark County Sheriff's Office front window was not broken out was because it was bulletproof glass. But the Antifa people went to the backside and shattered all the windows, $65,000 in damage, and no arrests were made. And remember, this is in kind of the backyard. It was apparently it was the juvenile building, I guess, maybe. Anyway, I would like to ask each of you, And 30 seconds, how will you respond if that happens again?
I'm not quite sure where you got your information, but I was working those nights with our line staff when we had the riots about a year and a half ago here. Is that what you're referring to, in November of 2020?
It just says juvenile building.
Yes, I know
built out.
what it is. We did make arrests. It's incredible when you arrest people from Portland and they get booked into our clothing over here and they can't believe it. There was 3 or 4 arrests made. So that, I don't think that's completely accurate. We can't arrest every single, if you haven't been to a riot, they're difficult, and we only have so much personnel. So we try to, I shouldn't hope you haven't been to a riot. But watch them on the news and you can see. So that, I don't think that information is correct. We did make 3 arrests and they were not happy. They had to post bail, and that's what we need to do, people. When they come over here, they need to get put behind bars.
Okay, 30 seconds. You guys want to answer that?
The simple answer would be, yes, we need to arrest them. And we did, I wasn't sure when that happened, but we would definitely arrest those folks. And what is our first job? To safeguard and protect the community. And I will do that, absolutely.
Mr. Shook?
Yeah, I think just some extra context to that was there was actually a riot or some ruckus people up in Hazeldale at the same time. So we were spread really thin, and Vancouver Police was down in Esther Shore Park. So again, staff and employees that were there at the office. I think it's really important, one of those primary rules of the sheriff is to keep the peace here in our community, right? As Chuck Atkins did, and he let out some of the other inmates because guess what? If we're going to have riots in this town, we should have a place to stick them. And in fact, I was working the next morning when they were here bailing themselves out, really upset because in Portland it's a door, right? You just come in and out. Here they stayed the night, which is not the best jail to be in, by the way, if you didn't know that.
Okay, Jim Sineski's got a question. And remember, gentlemen, 30 seconds.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We really appreciate your commitment. What would you guys do, simple question, with the reserve deputy program? Would you revive it or would you keep it canceled? Thank you.
I say first day we get there, we get that program back and running. Right away. That is one of our best things we have, that we have a contact with the public. We have men and women who are volunteering their time, effort, and many times their money to actually be a part of it. This is an outstanding program. It should not have been canceled, and we need to bring that back to life right away.
We have 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Unfortunately, Ray doesn't know everything that happened with that. I was on that decision-making process. Ultimately, it was the sheriff's decision. There's a lot of things that changed in the state of Washington with the laws and the training requirements. And we're putting volunteers who don't do it very often in the high liability that we're facing with law enforcement right now and putting them in jeopardy, which puts our county in jeopardy. So as much, I was a reserve officer, he was a reserve officer, I love the program. I'm always willing to listen to an argument, but the state of Washington changed the requirements. The Criminal Justice Training Commission changed the requirements for training for reserves, and we couldn't keep it up. And we can't put them in that liability. So that's one of the main reasons why it was canceled, but I'd always be willing to listen to an argument.
For most of my career, I've been a trainer. I started in the reserve program. I've trained academies of police officers. The PR component of having volunteers is super important. This agency needs credible, current training. I will actually have a fuller training cadre to provide this next level of training. Our jail employees had 12 hours of training last year. It's a problem all over the office. So if we provide you more training, and that was physical hands-on training, by the way. So it's more training is the answer, and then yes, I would be bringing back that program as well.
Jim Mozina, can you come up here? I know you have a question. He was the first one who asked me, will there be questions? I said, well, I don't know if we have time.
Yes, thank you all, gentlemen, for coming. We really respect what you do for us. The question I have is about election integrity. There's a lot of fraud going on. We all know it. Everyone sees it. There's evidence, mountains of evidence. Many people say the sheriff is one person that can do something about it. Unfortunately, what we always hear from you, number of you, is excuses. Oh, I can't do that. I need to have the prosecutor on my side. I needed this. I have this law. I have that law. I can't do this. All I hear is can't. Tell me what you will do to eliminate and to start arresting people regarding election integrity.
was a great question. Okay, 30 seconds.
Go. That is not only a great question, but we have to do something right away. If we don't have the right to vote, and if our votes don't count, then we don't have a country anymore. And that's simple as that. Your sheriff can and will do something. When you have fraud, when you have people falsifying documents, when you have people that are developing false registrations, when you have people that are doing duplicate voting, when people are doing fraudulent use of absentee ballots, when you have impersonation fraud, all of those are actual crimes, so we can prosecute those.
Okay, 30 seconds.
I know, it goes fast, doesn't it? We just had a case come a few weeks ago that I was notified that the sheriff had our detectives look on election fraud. So we look at it, that we still have to go through due process. I know people are upset about this, but we still have to look at them case by case, and the sheriff has a responsibility to look at those, and we do look at those. So when the case is brought forward, we do look at it. I don't know if it feels like there were some assumptions made in that, like this has been going on with the sheriff's office. I only know of one case recently that was brought to us, one a few years ago, that we actually have our detectives look into it. And so we look into those things, and if there's probable cause, we give it to the prosecutor's office and we work with them. So there you go.
Yeah, whether you're at the sheriff's office or any other police agency, we are the investigative arm, right? And we have to have the prosecutors on board. So we can do everything we can do, even make an arrest. But whether a prosecution occurs or not comes from our prosecutors. And it's time to put pressure on them to start doing the right thing to protect our community, right? So again, yes, absolutely. Investigation, fraud, make an arrest if appropriate, but again, it's got to go to the prosecutors and they have to be a part of it. So,
Josephine.
Thank you. Hi, as a mother of a murdered child, still seeking justice, I have discovered there's over 250,000 cold case homicides. Now, after COVID, it's probably gone up to 275,000 cold case homicides, and it's climbing every single day. What do you guys have any kind of plan on how to deal with these cold case homicides, which, as we all know, it involves a lot of agencies. It's a prosecutor's office as well. Has to do with DNA labs that, takes 3 months to 3 years to get a test back. There are a lot of cases that have DNA that are not being tested, and nobody's addressing this problem. And I think we need to declare a war on homicide so the president can write billions of dollars to solve these crimes. So what do you intend? Do you have a cold case unit? Does the Sheriff's Department have a cold case unit that deals with cold cases specifically?
All right. I'm sorry about your loss. We got to know each other before this. And thank you for the book, too. This is real emotion here, right? This is what's affecting us, these things. We have a cold case unit at the Sheriff's Office. We have ex-prosecutors. We have detectives. We had just solved a pretty big one a year or two ago. A guy was booked, and he was in Walla Walla for several murders, and we found several more victims through DNA testing. The DNA testing has gotten, I don't know about the time limits, but it's gotten phenomenal with our state. And it's incredible, some of the homicides that we are solving with this. Unfortunately, probably staffing is an issue. If we had more staff, we can solve more of these, but we do have a cold case unit, and they are solving these things. And that's the important thing, is to have a liaison with the family, that we're always talking with the family and keeping them informed. But I've seen some great things happen. By the way, and when they go do their testing at their, and they want to know where their generation is from, those things are catching up.
Okay, 30 seconds, sorry.
All right, sorry. It's an emotional thing, and I think it's very important that she had that question.
Mr. Shook.
yeah, actually, I think cold cases is super important, right? And we have a lot of skilled investigators that are retiring and moving off into other things. And they aren't necessarily looking for pay, but to keep them involved. I used to have this conversation with my father all the time, is that we often are like, 30 years, get out, go do something else, you're not valuable anymore. But we have some skilled individuals that we could easily put on cases like your daughters. I actually agree that if there's a period of time, if a law enforcement agency is inept or unable to investigate like your daughters, you should be able to go to another place and get it investigated. So I agree with that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Reynolds, 30 seconds.
I'm absolutely saddened for your loss. And I've known about this loss. You and I have talked about this. There's no question we have one of the absolute best investigators at Clark County Sheriff's. They have some of the best detectives I've ever seen. They can do this. I really like the idea that Mr. Shook just came up with as far as using retired people, again, in a reserve capacity. That'll be another way we can use them and actually make them reserve deputies while they investigate. I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and Susan Courtney, because she worked so hard, she gets to ask the last question.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being so forthright. My husband and I have served on a variety of advisory councils, and nobody listens to us. There are commissions and councils within the city of Vancouver and within the county that we've served on, and we seem to get a report from the leader about what they've done. And we have valuable information to share, and we are problem solvers. And so it's been a long time since I've served on an advisory board. My husband just left one because they don't want to hear anything. The end. My question is, how can that change? Are you interested in hearing, if you're going to have an advisory board, I don't know what that means. Does it mean that you're looking for advice? So my question is, if people donate their time, come to a meeting, and talk about issues, and it falls on deaf ears, you're not going to have any people anymore. So how will that change under your guidance?
Well, thank you for that question. Actually, that's super important, right? These relationships that we've talked about all night. And having advisory boards are partnerships, right? They're partnerships so that we can share information, you can share information back, we can create obtainable goals and ideas, and what exactly are we working on, right? So just advisory boards to have conversations is not really what you're looking for. That's not what I would be looking for. I plan on having at least one advisory board, and it will be with community groups, all varieties of them, some of them that are discouraged about what's going on here in Clark County, but I look forward to being able to work with you and anybody else that wants to be a part of that. Thank you.
I'm going to take that from you.
30 seconds.
All right. Are you taking the mic from me? I was trying to. Oh, I thought we were going in this order.
Hey, 30 seconds.
I had mentioned at the beginning, and we need to communicate, and you're right, I've been on boards too, like what's the purpose, right? What are we doing? Getting all the stakeholders in there, and also having it over a meal too, because people talk more when they're eating too. Getting them in there, because we can't do this alone. That's a central theme. We have to have the community's involvement. We have to listen to everybody and have a line staff person who works the street, and have the business owner, and have the retired person. We have to listen to everybody. What are the community's concerns, and what can we do, and be honest with them. If there's something we can't do, you need to know, so you call the council if we need influence and say, they need help with this, X, Y, and Z. They need help with body camera money. Whatever the problem is, that has not happened. It's driving me crazy. That's my number one. That's why I said my number one priority was communication. I know I've gone over it, haven't I? So I apologize. So thank you for that question. You're right.
To have a citizen advisory board is going to be number one priority that I can have. It is critical that we have a group of between 12 to 20 people as part of the citizen advisory board. I also want to reestablish the school resource officer program. Again, these are all reform. These are all very much reform things that we need to be doing. We need to also be able to bring back, like we were talking about, the reserve program. All of these programs that we're talking about will help our sheriff's office become more effective, and we can also have you directly involved in this. And I'd be honored to do that. And thank you.
Okay, folks, I know I said that Susan was the last question, but there is going to be one more question from Andrei Ivanov. And before I have him ask the question, I just want to give a super big shout out to Clark County Today and Lacamas Magazine for covering this event. And there will be a Clark County Today, Lacamas Magazine, and they are our gracious media partners. And there will be lots of coverage over the next 24 hours and live footage that people can watch and see this debate at home. And we really appreciate those media partners. And we have some time right after Andre asks his last questions. The candidates are going to be here for a while. You can see they have tables set up with their signs and campaign literature. So take this opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with these wonderful gentlemen who have really put themselves out for us tonight and for the community. And you guys, we all know how tough it is. Those of us who have served in office and have run campaigns, it is a brutal, brutal environment out there. And so I just want to thank all three of you for doing what you're doing. This will be the very last question.
Audience, thank you for your patience. I do appreciate it. I think this is crucial and important, and I know I'm sure there's a lot of other very good questions here, but gentlemen, secondly, I wanted to say thank you as well for what you've done and what you continue to do. We as citizens are not only a massive resource that has been underutilized. I have been working hard to actually communicate with the Vancouver Police and sit down with the Sheriff's Office, and I've been kind of brushed off as a nobody. And I've simply said, we're working with youth. We have such a big network. Lean on us. Allow us to work with you. So my question is, how will you work with us and actually give us your time, give us your ear, and what would you actually implement to allow us to be a relevant partner, because we have means, we have resources, and most importantly, we have this incredible community that wants to work with you.
Okay, 30 seconds.
Can I ask a clarifying question? I know are you talking about your group specifically, or are you talking about the community in general?
We're networked with the entire community on a large scale, but I am speaking about allow us to be heard, allow us to be a partner to you because we want to help you. But we have a large network that is underutilized because we're constantly bumping up against the same roadblocks of actually having a dialogue and a conversation because we have the resources and means.
Thank you, Andre.
Andre, thank you, and I actually know what you meant. We need to have, and I will, as part of as your sheriff, I have been working with you before on other projects that we've been doing, and you have been very responsive to that, and it's been outstanding. That with an older lady where you were going to build a house for her. If we could have, you would have built a house for her. We also have a place where you were taking care of children that we're going to need. It's outstanding. As your sheriff, there's no question in my mind I will be working with Flash Love and any other group as part of the Neighborhood Excellence Team. I believe it's a very critical part to engage the community in exactly what we're doing as far as enforcement. And thank you.
Okay, 30 seconds.
All right, thank you. No, that's one of the main themes I've talked about over and over is community engagement. And I don't know who you spoke with at the Sheriff's Office. If anybody knows me who works for me, is I get back with them and I figure things out. And I love that engagement. We can't do this alone. I've said it, whether it's just enforcement or whatever. We need the community involvement, whether it's youth programs. I've worked with the Boys and Girls Club quite a bit, but I'm not quite sure about your program before. I don't know who you spoke to, but you can speak to me afterwards, and I can put you in touch with somebody, or it can be me. But that community engagement, we've talked about it over and over tonight, can't just happen during these bad times. We will get through this, but it's got to remember this in the good times. Ray and I were talking about this. We need everybody in here to remember, if we get through these times and things are going a lot better, well, so to speak, we got to keep that in community engagement going so we don't go back down. So that's a key here. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shook.
Again, I think I spent most of my month when I was an administrator talking to groups just like yours. and working together and coming up with plans and how could you engage and do various things in the community. Because again, you don't have to always have the permission of the sheriff's office or the sheriff to do things, but we should be working together to make sure we're not overlapping and doing various things. So I look forward to your group and any other groups actually reaching out and having those kinds of conversations, because it's going to take our village to take back the streets, and that's what we're going to do together. So thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. So let's give all three candidates a big round of applause. You guys killed it.
Ray wants to have a sing-off.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I'm not gonna. I can take him in golf, but I can't take him in a sing-off. Sorry.